Yu Ran, a super enthusiastic hotel intern, was all set for her first day. But surprise! The doorknob broke, trapping her inside. Not wanting to miss this amazing opportunity, she decided to climb down the balcony. Much to the astonishment of her neighbors, the bus carried the interns to Zad Resort, a top-notch Chinese resort. During the ride, the interns argued about Golden Key, a legendary hotel senior manager. Then, they actually met him. Everyone screamed because he was incredibly handsome. And Yu Ran? Well, let's just say she was completely smitten. All the students on the bus were sent to Zad for internships, and their first task was cleaning rooms. Miss Yue, a longtime employee, showed them the empty rooms for the interns to clean. While working, Yu Ran heard rumors of a ghost in the hotel who stole supplies. But being practical, she didn't believe in ghosts. Yu Ran went to her assigned room, started cleaning, and found someone had been there. She discovered a bag full of hotel supplies. Exploring further, she found a hot six-pack stranger. Thinking he was a pervert stealing from the hotel, she decided to catch him. The stranger, surprised by her aggressive actions, instinctively ran. But Yu Ran was determined to catch him, chasing after him while shouting for help to apprehend the suspect. The guy couldn't run anymore when she cornered him at the bridge. The image of a past accident terrified him. At that moment, the hotel security guard arrived, and Yu Ran lunged forward, trying to grab him, only to trip and fall. Luckily, he caught her, otherwise, she might have lost a few teeth. They took the suspect to the security office. Everyone assumed he was a pervert and a thief, refusing to listen to his explanations. They threatened to call the police and the manager. When manager Mai Ya entered, she immediately realized he was Chairman Fan Wu, ZAD's top manager. Hearing the manager speak, the security guard and Yu Ran quickly apologized profusely to Chairman Fan Wu for their mistake. The man Yu Ran had roughed up was Fan Wu, the chairman of Zad. After a time in Switzerland, he returned to Zad to manage the hotel. Externally, Zad was a famous resort, attracting many visitors, but internally, it faced many challenges. This time back, Chairman Fan Wu was determined to revive the hotel. His first plan upon returning was to host a wedding party for a famous star, boosting the hotel's reputation, while weeding out weak interns. The next day, Fan Wu addressed all the employees, announcing strict new rules. Even a minor mistake could lead to dismissal. In 3 days, the hotel would host a secret wedding for the famous actor, James. Chairman Fan Wu wanted everything perfect. This event would be used to filter all the interns. That evening, the interns chatted amongst themselves. Everyone thought Fan Wu was the chairman's son. The girls saw him as a great catch. Yu Ran, however, was terrified. Just thinking about her actions the previous day, she knew trouble was coming. The next day, the famous actor James arrived, causing a frenzy at the resort. Being a celebrity, he certainly wasn't like a regular guest. Not only did James demand secrecy surrounding the wedding, but he also insisted that Zad recreate the cake from his parents' wedding. He remembered a slice from that wedding to this day and wanted to recapture that flavor. Yu Ran, fearing Chairman Fan Wu's retribution, readily agreed to help. However, she ended up as James's personal errand girl. While cleaning a guest bathroom, she overheard a conversation between James and the manager. James was unhappy with the resort's cake, accusing them of deceiving him. David, known as the Golden Key, pleaded for another chance with the client. He risked losing his job if he failed again. Yu Ran, witnessing this, was incredibly impressed and admired him. The next day, she went to find David and saw him being bullied by the guest. She felt sorry for him. They talked, and through their conversation, Yu Ran found the address of the baker from 18 years ago. To help the hotel, the girl went directly to persuade the chef. But now, the chef of the past had become a foul-smelling drunkard, no longer holding any special value. He had long resented the hotel for firing him. Initially, her persuasion failed, so she decided to pull out a trick to help the chef regain his confidence and return to help the hotel. Thanks to Yu Ran, Chef Zhou agreed to make the wedding cake for James. Just as everyone was relying on this chef, his hands began to shake uncontrollably, preventing him from decorating the cake. Yu Ran once again appeared just in time, bringing him a potion. Chef Zhou drank a few sips and completely recovered, finishing the wedding cake. James tasted the cake and was incredibly satisfied. He finally found the familiar taste from 18 years ago. Yu Ran was overjoyed, thinking she'd accomplished something big. Unexpectedly, Chairman Fan Yu fired her for leaving without permission. Despite her best efforts to convince him, Fan Yu was adamant about her dismissal. Feeling that the chairman had a grudge against her, Yue Ran didn't plead further and decided to quit. Before leaving, she got revenge for her colleagues, grabbed her suitcase, and left. Before she could get into her car, Fan Yu appeared. He informed her that she had one last chance that day, and she had to fight to keep it. If she could earn a plus point, she could stay at ZAD. The next day, James was very pleased with Yu Ran, surprised by her competence. When she suggested he write a thank you letter to the hotel, praising her good work, he refused. So, she continued with her plan to earn a plus point. Her task for the day was to guard a wedding dress. While working, she noticed a drone hovering around James's room. Suspicious, Yu Ran chased after it. While pursuing the drone, she accidentally bumped into a woman in black. Without thinking much about it, she continued to chase the strange object. The drone fell onto the lawn, and as Yue Ran picked it up, its owner arrived. He demanded she return his toy, but Yue Ran refused. Based on her observations, the man in front of her was a paparazzi, collecting information on ZAD's guests. Fan Yu arrived just in time, and she asked him to deal with the situation before returning to work. As soon as she returned to James's suite, the wedding dress was gone. Panicked, Yue Ran used several tricks to find the thief. She searched every room in the hotel, hoping to uncover the truth. In the elevator, she ran into the suspicious woman in black again. Her detective instincts kicked in, and she followed the woman, discovering she was the dress thief. The woman, Shin Chin, was a die-hard James fan of over 6 years. Heartbroken over the news of her idol's upcoming wedding, she wanted to blackmail him. Fan Yu followed the clues and found the thief. As the two women argued, he stepped in to mediate the volatile situation. Jin Chin insisted on seeing James, threatening suicide otherwise. James arrived to meet his obsessed fan, but Shin Xin was stunned. The real-life James didn't match the idealized image she had worshipped. The James she adored was perfect. The James she met was ordinary. After speaking with her idol, Shin Xin decided not to interfere in his life any further. Yu Ran was injured and had to rest for a while. Waking up close to midnight, she panicked and sought out Fan Yu, begging for another chance. Though he wanted to keep her, Fan Yu gave her a hard time. Finally, thanks to numerous thank you letters from the hotel's general manager, Yu Ran secured her position at ZAD. The next day, the entire hotel was busy preparing for the wedding. Even a minor mishap could reflect poorly on the hotel, so everyone poured their energy into the event. Everything was running smoothly until someone unexpectedly caught the bridal bouquet. He then proposed to Ning Jia, Yu Ran's friend. Even Yu Ran was unaware that Ning Jia had a boyfriend. The drama didn't end there. The paparazzi from before reappeared. Amidst the wedding celebrations, Ning Jia's sudden proposal shocked everyone. It seemed odd that such a successful man would propose so quickly to a seemingly ordinary woman. It turned out his deceased ex-girlfriend was also named Ning Jia. Grief-stricken by her death in a car accident, he was searching for someone to fill the void. Ning Jia, oblivious to this, thought she had landed a great catch. When the truth came out, she was humiliated in front of everyone. Yu Ran missed this, as she was busy chasing the paparazzi. Using her impressive athleticism, she caught him, only to discover Fan Yu is in cahoots with him. Fan Yu had planned to use the wedding to generate publicity for the hotel. Yu Ran was utterly shocked by this act. She criticized Fan Yu's methods, seeing him as hypocritical. They argued back and forth, resulting in Fan Yu conceding a get-out-of-jail-free card to her. If anyone got fired, she could save them. The next day, Fan Yu stood on a platform and dismissed the incompetent interns. Among them was Ning Jia. Because of the hotel romance, she was fired. Seeing her friend's distress, Yu Ran went to Fan Yu and used her card to save Ning Jia. Having been outsmarted, Fan Yu had to let it go. Yu Ran was thrilled to have outmaneuvered the chairman. She even ran into her crush, and they had fun at the amusement park. Unfortunately, this caught Fan Yu's watchful eye, and he immediately ordered the park's power cut. Their next guest was an obscure musician with a history of mental instability and suicidal tendencies. The hotels he frequented suffered from his reputation, and many had banned him. For reasons unknown, Fan Yu accepted his booking and even requested extra care for him. Yu Ran was assigned to clean his room and was driven crazy by his 2 suicide attempts in a single day, hanging and wrist-cutting. Luckily, she intervened in time, preventing a tragedy. Frustrated, she acted out. Manager David called her in for a talk and invited her for a drink. This cheered her up considerably. He also shared insights on understanding guest psychology, which helped Yu-ran deal with the musician. She pretended to be indifferent to his music, and he opened up to her, even agreeing to play ping pong with her. They played 4 or 5 rounds until Yu-ran was exhausted, but the musician wasn't. Witnessing this, Fan Yu challenged him to a match. Naturally, with his protagonist aura, Fan Yu won. Yu-ran, cheering him on, tripped and sprained her ankle, forcing Fan Yu to carry her back. Surprisingly, Fan Yu, who had a phobia of slopes, overcame his fear. Yu-ran excitedly prepared for her date with David. Ningjia helped with her makeup and outfit. Seeing Fan Yu's shirt on the table, Ningjia offered to return it. Previously, Fan Yu had unknowingly helped Ningjia out of a difficult situation, but she attributed it to romantic interest. So, she secretly arranged a meeting with him. Fan Yu saw a pink invitation, and assuming it was from Yu-ran, agreed. Arriving at the location, he found Ningjia waiting. Realizing his mistake, he angrily scolded her. He even flat out rejected her. Just then, Yu-ran got a text from David, canceling their date. By chance, they ran into each other, and she and Fan Yu had a big fight. In the end, she gave in and let him take her for a walk. After their blow-up, Chairman Fan Yu took Yu-ran for a walk. They went up a hill, looked at the sky, and talked. Yu-ran told him he was a cold-hearted boss. Fan Yu, being the chairman, had his own reasons, and said she just didn't get it. On impulse, and a little tipsy, he kissed her. Right after, he realized he messed up and pretended to be drunk to get out of it. Yu-ran was shocked and mad. She yelled at him for stealing her first kiss. The next morning, they woke up in each other's arms. Remembering what happened, Yu-ran tried to wake him up to talk about it, but he pretended to be asleep. Annoyed, she took him back to the hotel. David saw this and got the wrong idea. The next morning, Ningjia woke Yu-ran up for work and told her all about how embarrassing she was the night before, which made Yu-ran cringe. Yu-ran met David and lied about going to a concert, which made him totally change his mind about her. Talk about bad timing. Yu-ran ran into Fan Yu in the elevator. They were both uncomfortable, but Fan Yu kept pretending to be drunk and clueless, saying the kiss was just an accident. Hearing this, Yu-ran relaxed, figuring she hadn't cheated on her crush. This bothered Fan Yu, so he went to a dating expert to figure things out. And wouldn't you know it, the expert had all the answers. Yu-ran went to see David to clear the air. She told him everything that happened, hoping he wouldn't be mad. David, now seeing Fan Yu as competition, went to the same dating expert. The expert, being a smooth talker, gave David the exact same advice he gave Fan Yu. David admitted he liked Yu-ran and wanted to take care of her. The musician, Yu-ran's regular customer, could tell something was bothering her. He encouraged her to open up, so she told him about her crush on David. Wanting to help, he threw a birthday party at a bar and invited David, hoping to give Yu-ran and her crush a chance to connect. Just like he planned, David showed up at 9:30, and the party was a blast. Yu-ran and her crush hung out and even danced together. Fan Yu, working late, saw a video of them and was about to ignore it when he saw how much fun they were having. He couldn't take it and raced to the party to break them up. The party ended when the power went out, but Yu-ran and David had gotten closer. Meanwhile, Yu-ran's friend, Ningjia, messed up a customer's bill. While not a huge mistake, Chairman Fan Yu found out. He decided to dock both their pay. Ningjia cried to her friends about the situation with her boyfriend. They felt bad for her and comforted her. Later, Ningjia's boyfriend confronted Fan Yu about the pay cut, arguing he'd done nothing wrong and had even reported his girlfriend's mistake. Fan Yu looked at him sternly. He felt the boyfriend was irresponsible and should share the penalty since they were a couple. After this incident, Fan Yu banned romantic relationships within the hotel. This rule seemed unreasonable, especially for long-term employees who practically lived there. Yu-ran thought this was ridiculous and confronted him, joking that he was just lonely and jealous. They bickered until the musician interrupted, announcing someone was attempting suicide. Yu-ran and Fan Yu rushed to the scene. This time, it was a hotel employee dealing with family issues. They had assumed it was the musician again, but he hadn't actually done anything. It's often those who talk the most who do the least. By the time they reached the lake, the employee had jumped in. Fan Yu jumped in to save him. Yu-ran arrived just as the musician accidentally pushed her into the water. She yelled for help. Fan Yu, focused on rescuing the employee, successfully brought him to shore. Yu Ran had swallowed a lot of water, so Fan Yu gave her CPR. In that hazy space between life and death, she saw Fan Yu's lips approaching and coughed up the water, waking up and running away embarrassed. The next day, Yue Ran and Ning Jia ran into Fan Yu. For some reason, she hiccuped every time she saw him. She was so embarrassed she wanted to disappear. Ning Jia thought she had a crush on him, but Yue Ran denied it. How could she like someone as annoying as Fan Yu? To test this theory, Yue Ran secretly followed him, getting close to see if she'd hiccup. And she did. She even hiccuped during a celebratory dinner for a client. The musician had regained his creative spark, which was great for him and the hotel's reputation. Fan Yu capitalized on this for publicity, which Yu Ran saw as exploitative. Just as they were celebrating increased bookings and revenue, a video surfaced online showing hotel staff making mistakes on the job. The video brought reporters swarming to the hotel, and Yue Ran got caught in the mess. She insisted the person in the video wasn't her, but no one believed her. Even with her friends defending her, both the hotel staff and the media targeted her. Wanting to protect themselves, the hotel blamed her, even hiring reporters to write articles accusing her. Fan Yu learned this was his father, the chairman's doing, so he confronted him. This nearly gave his father a heart attack, landing him in the hospital. Even there they argued. Somehow, their heated exchange was overheard by a programmer who worked in it. He immediately recognized that the video had been heavily edited. He suspected someone was trying to frame Yu Ran, and this person had to be someone within the hotel, with enough authority to manipulate the surveillance footage. After considering all angles, Fan Yu suspected someone in the security department. The next day, the company held a press conference to apologize to the customers. The hotel wanted Yu Ran to take all the blame. David, following orders from his superiors, tried to convince her to accept full responsibility. This way, they could protect the company and many innocent employees. The press conference was quickly organized. Reporters were everywhere, eager to dig up information from the hotel. The issue was finally resolved publicly, and everyone seemed satisfied. Fan Yu called Yu Ran in for a talk. He admitted he knew everything and had planned to use a reverse psychology strategy to uncover clues and catch the culprit. Unexpectedly, this strategy had terrified Yu Ran, who thought she was about to be fired. Chairman Z was happy his son had smoothly resolved the incident. However, Fan Yu didn't think it was so simple. He believed someone was behind the security guard, intentionally setting him up. The perpetrator's motive was unclear, but the method was incredibly sophisticated, indicating there was likely inside support. Hearing this, Chairman Xi had a hunch who might be behind it, but he didn't tell his son. Although the issue was resolved, the public remained unhappy with the hotel. To shift public opinion, Fan Yu released a statement. Following the incident, ZAD conducted a thorough inspection of all departments and discovered extensive damage to the hotel's mattresses, prompting a complete replacement. This news quickly grabbed public attention and restored the hotel's image. Of course, discarding old mattresses meant finding new ones. Knowing Yu Ran's expertise in mattress selection, Fan Yu asked for her help. Since childhood, she had traveled extensively with her father, trading mattresses, so she was very knowledgeable. Her expertise impressed Fan Yu, who praised her profusely. While he was in a good mood, she requested a transfer to the front desk. She thought it would be easy, but she was wrong. Fan Yu slyly transferred her to the food and beverage department. Furious, she couldn't do anything about it. Ning Jia, her friend, was assigned to the front desk. Being beautiful, she hoped to use her looks to attract a wealthy benefactor. However, instead of millionaires, a group of budget travelers arrived. They were employees of an IT company that had helped Fan Yu resolve a previous crisis, earning them ZIP treatment. This group was incredibly clumsy, leaving a trail of destruction wherever they went. In just over a day, they caused 800,000 in damages to the hotel's infrastructure. Fan Yu was frustrated but had to tolerate them due to their VIP status. Yue Ran's close friend, Ning Jia, was a pampered young woman interning with her boyfriend. Used to being spoiled, she and her boyfriend had frequent misunderstandings, and their relationship deteriorated. ZAD's new guests were not only destructive but also noisy, constantly bothering David. Fortunately, Yu Ran repeatedly intervened to help him. Impressed by her competence, David praised her and asked her out. He wasted no time securing a date with Yu Ran. They had fun sculpting clay figures together. David even drew a golden key symbol on her clay figure, hoping she'd soon earn that prestigious title. Just as Yu Ran was beaming, Fan Yu showed up, teasing her about her ugly clay figure, and continued to pester her. He accidentally broke it, making her cry. To make amends, he had to make her an identical one. That evening, Yue Ran had to work late because a guest wanted fondue. Unsure how to make it, Fan Yu offered to help if she made him a clay figure. Without hesitation, she agreed. Meanwhile, one of Yu Ran's friends had fallen for one of the it guys staying at the hotel. However, Ningjia quickly burst her bubble, revealing he had short-term memory loss and forgot everything after 24 hours. In the freezer, Yue Ran and Fan Yu gathered ingredients for the fondue. They bantered as they picked out fresh food. Yue Ran compared his personality to a frozen fish, stiff and smelly. Fan Yu retorted, comparing her to a frozen duck. Suddenly, the freezer door slammed shut, trapping them inside. They realized they'd left their keycards and phones outside. They hoped someone would discover them soon before they froze to death. Fan Yu grew weaker. He already had a stomachache, and the cold worsened it. Yu Ran desperately tried to keep him conscious, fearing he would die. Finally, the door opened, and they were found frozen stiff. Fan Yu was in worse shape and rushed to the hospital. David rushed to Yue Ran's side, worried sick. Seeing his concern, she was so happy she couldn't stop smiling, even though her face was frozen. The next day, Fan Yu recovered but felt sluggish. His mother immediately knew he was lovesick, but he denied it vehemently. At work, he immediately sought out Yu Ran. Finding him sneaking around the kitchen, she gave him 2 packs of stomach medicine, which melted his icy heart. Zad attracted some eccentric guests, like the it guys who ate at the buffet like they'd never seen food before. The hotel worried they'd make themselves sick. Yu Ran and her colleagues brainstormed ways to redirect their attention. She learned they were executives of a tech company that had just gone bankrupt. The CEO wanted to use their remaining funds to give his employees one last memory together. Yu Ran told Fan Yu about this, questioning their apparent apathy. As a hotel owner, Fan Yu's priority was maximizing their spending. Learning they enjoyed thrill-seeking activities, he organized a paintball game for them. The hotel's initial goal was simply entertainment and revenue generation, but the outcome was unexpected. The IT team won, and their CEO announced the bankruptcy during his victory speech. Before disbanding, he offered severance packages, but no one wanted to leave. They all wanted to help him rebuild the company. This motivated the chairman to rebuild his company. From the paintball game, both Fan Yu and David realized they had feelings for Yue Ran. They talked it out and decided to compete fairly for her affection. Fan Yu consulted the love guru, a perpetually single but enthusiastic advisor, about how to woo a woman. The guru suggested finding the perfect setting for a confession. Fan Yu took this advice to heart. First, he gathered the kitchen staff and then identified a series of problems. Next, he pretended to need assistance and chose Yue Ran, effectively setting up a date. While he was stressing over how to confess, Yu Ran developed a new business idea. She felt the hotel's cuisine was too upscale, not catering to the average customer. She also thought the current atmosphere wasn't conducive to romance, nor befitting someone of his stature. Fan Yu searched for a suitable location. While he was at a loss, Yue Ran excitedly explained her culinary vision. She believed Zad should offer seasonal and regional specialties, instead of expensive, extravagant dishes. Since it was summer, she suggested a local seafood buffet featuring crawfish. Fan Yu expressed concerns about the hygiene of crawfish, so Yu Ran suggested they visit an upscale restaurant to try some. She described a luxurious, romantic setting, reminiscent of a Hollywood movie, complete with a beautiful lake. Intrigued by this idyllic description, and trusting the bar owner's recommendation, he chose this as the place to confess his feelings. Fan Yu meticulously chose his outfit and cologne for his date with Yu Ran. They arrived at a bustling, crowded crawfish vendor. The romantic setting she described was couples huddled in line, and the beautiful lake was a smelly river flowing nearby. Fan Yu wanted to leave immediately, but Yue Ran dragged him inside. Anything money can't solve, more money can. They ordered a massive plate of extra spicy crawfish. Initially disgusted, Fan Yu soon devoured the crawfish, forgetting all about his confession plans. After their meal, he remembered his purpose. Finding the setting unsuitable, he took her to a fancy restaurant. But disaster struck. Fan Yu, with his sensitive stomach, easily got upset by spicy food. He'd eaten so much crawfish that he spent their romantic dinner in the restroom. He finally emerged as Yu Ran finished her meal. His grand confession turned into a humiliating experience when he let out a loud fart. mortifying everyone in the restaurant. Embarrassed, he dragged Yue Ran out. In the taxi, his continuous farting nearly suffocated everyone. He finally made it back to his room, only to run into David, who lectured him about setting a good example and not hitting on employees. The next morning, Yue Ran presented her crawfish project idea to Fan Yu. After his disastrous and embarrassing experience, he flatly rejected it. Undeterred, Yu Ran used the embarrassing incident to blackmail him. If he refused, she'd spread the news, making him the laughingstock of the hotel. Unable to face that humiliation, Fan Yu reluctantly agreed. Yu Ran's crawfish feast was a huge success, and she was publicly praised. Seizing the opportunity, Fan Yu also lifted the dating ban. Yu Ran was thrilled. Her efforts had paid off. David congratulated her and suggested they celebrate with dinner. But Fan Yu intervened, forcing everyone to work overtime, while he planned a surprise for Yu Ran. He took her to a 5-star restaurant. This time prepared, he brought antacids. However, avoiding one pitfall led to another. David spotted them, suspecting a romantic surprise. He followed them to sabotage Fan Yu's plans. Just as Fan Yu was about to confess, David interrupted, ruining the moment. Furious, Fan Yu grabbed David and started a fight. Yu Ran struggled to get them back to Zad. On the way, Fan Yu received an urgent call. Several guests had allergic reactions to the crawfish and were demanding compensation. Yu Ran easily proved the crawfish wasn't to blame. But they refused to believe her, escalating their demands. As suspected, these guests were problematic. They were minor celebrities using the crawfish feast as a pretext for a lawsuit. A cunning makeup artist was behind the scheme. They thought their plan was foolproof, but it wasn't. To uncover the truth, Yue Ran and David visited the dumpster, retrieving the model's discarded garbage. These proved they'd been faking their allergic reactions to frame the hotel. Initially, the models were confident, even insulting Yu Ran's appearance and accusing her of jealousy. But the evidence silenced them. David defended Yue Ran, declaring her the most beautiful. They reported their findings to Fan Yu, expecting praise, but he wasn't pleased. Seeing Yu Ran with his rival enraged him, and he angrily dismissed them. David quickly invited Yu Ran to dinner. Coincidentally, at the same time Fan Yu had asked her out. In the commotion, she misheard and agreed to both, unaware she'd made plans with Fan Yu. That evening, while Yue Ran enjoyed dinner with David, Fan Yu waited in vain at the crawfish restaurant. Worried, he called Ning Jia, who was having dinner with the makeup artist. She'd met him by chance and quickly fallen for his smooth talk. Unbeknownst to her, he was a predator who exploited women, forcing them into suggestive photo shoots. Meanwhile, David confessed his feelings to Yu Ran, and she quickly accepted. So, they officially became a couple. Meanwhile, Fan Yu, still at the restaurant, was unaware. A staff member bumped into him, injuring his back, causing him immense pain. Knowing the truth would have broken his heart as well. Yu Ran returned home to news of Fan Yu's injury and rushed to see him. She took him to the hospital, only to receive news of Ning Jia's trouble, and immediately returned to the hotel. The makeup artist was a con man. He falsely accused Ning Jia of stealing a designer bag. When she tried to return it, he claimed it was a fake, accusing her of switching the real one. It was all a scam, but Ning Jia's greed had also played a part. Yu Ran and her friends tried to figure out how to replace the bag. Desperate, she called Fan Yu, borrowing 5,000 yuan. Fresh out of the hospital, the first thing he heard was a request for money. Infuriated, he scolded and threatened to fire her, but he transferred the money. The next morning, she and her friends met the con man, planning to trap him into confessing. But they underestimated him. He was too smart for their tricks. Just as Yu Ran was about to lose her temper, Fan Yu appeared and exposed him. She was furious with this awful guest and ready for a showdown. Fan Yu had already called the police, who'd investigated and were ready to arrest the con man. Grateful, Yu Ran thanked him. This was a change in his usual behavior. He'd typically prioritized the hotel's reputation, but now he prioritized justice for his employees. Still unaware of her relationship with David, Fan Yu continued to flirt with Yu Ran. Oblivious, she missed his subtle hints. When David revealed their relationship, Fan Yu was devastated. His fear of slopes returned. He was heartbroken, seeing her image everywhere. Yu Ran, blissfully unaware of his feelings, was preoccupied with her new relationship. The next day, learning of Ning Jia's dismissal, Yu Ran asked David for help. Since they were now a couple, their closeness wasn't unusual, but Fan Yu walked in on them, accusing them of unprofessional behavior. Even more worse, since Yu Ran owed him 5,000 yuan, he deducted from her salary. She couldn't leave Zad until the debt was paid. David, learning she'd borrowed money to help her friend, offered to pay it back, but Fan Yu refused, insisting on collecting from Yu Ran. They talked about their relationship and work. David wanted to help Ning Jia keep her job, but a still resentful Fan Yu refused. However, after being persuaded by his secretary, Fan Yu agreed to keep her. Ning Jia's parents were coming to the hotel to visit their pampered daughter and see how she was doing. Ning Jia worked out of passion. Her parents were extremely wealthy. She wanted to be with her boyfriend and take care of him. Used to a luxurious life, she didn't understand her boyfriend Lu Hao's more humble circumstances. This led to frequent arguments. Ning Jia's parents had originally chosen Zad's villa for their stay, but assistant manager David had already reserved it, planning a surprise for Yu Ran. This could have been discussed and resolved, but upon seeing Fan Yu, David flatly refused to give up the villa. The hotel had to arrange a different program for Mr. and Mrs. Ning. The villa area was truly luxurious and beautiful, with the meals served meticulously and elaborately. Yu Ran had never experienced anything like it in her life. The strict dining etiquette made her nervous. Throughout the meal, she did nothing but observe which utensil to use for each dish. This made the date less enjoyable. The date became increasingly awkward for Yu Ran. She tried not to show her discomfort, but she wasn't relaxed. David noticed this and felt he hadn't done a good job of making her happy. He posted pictures of their date online, and news of their relationship immediately went viral. This bothered Yu Ran. She hadn't wanted him to do that. She started to see their relationship more clearly. She felt there was a big difference between them. They were like a guest and an excellent service provider. David always tried to please her, but she didn't feel love from him. Fan Yu was entertaining important clients. Caught up in the moment, he drank alcohol and forgot about his alcohol allergy. He had a reaction and was rushed to the hospital. Meanwhile, Yu Ran had an allergic reaction to Lingji mushrooms while dining with David, causing her face to swell and her vision to blur. Even in his delirium, Fan Yu dreamt of Yu Ran holding hands and kissing his rival, which drove him crazy. He couldn't accept being the third wheel in their relationship. When he woke up, he found Yu Ran in the bed next to him. She had also been diagnosed with a food allergy. Her face was so swollen, she was almost unrecognizable. The doctor recommended rest and observation. Thinking the hospital room wasn't suitable for Yu Ran, Fan Yu took her to a quieter, more comfortable place, his own home. There, she fell into a deep sleep. When she woke up, she was horrified to find her lips extremely swollen. Fan Yu explained about the Lingji mushroom allergy and told her he wanted her to stay at his house so he could make sure she recovered properly. David went to the hospital to visit Yu Ran, but discovered she was gone and hadn't taken her phone. He had no idea his girlfriend was at the chairman's house. Without her phone, Yu Ran couldn't contact anyone, including David. The next morning, Fan Yu took her back to the hotel, fully recovered. David was waiting for her, apologizing for the allergic reaction and promising to change for her. At that moment, Yu Ran realized she didn't have romantic feelings for him. She admired him, but they had little in common. It was best to end things. The next day, their internships ended. The hotel announced the new hires. Fortunately, Yu Ran and her friends secured permanent positions, but they weren't happy with their assigned departments. Yu Ran was assigned to housekeeping, and Ning Jia to food and beverage. Unhappy, Yu Ran took her friend to complain to Fan Yu, but he refused to change anything. He explained the importance of her role in housekeeping and expected her to fulfill her duties. Yu Ran and David decided to break up, but remain friends. Knowing she wanted to transfer to the front desk, he offered to help, but she refused. She couldn't accept his kindness after rejecting his romantic advances. David was heartbroken and went to a bar to drown his sorrows. There, he overheard someone saying he and Yu Ran were getting married. Confused, he asked the love guru, who explained that Yu Ran wanted him to propose. Her rejection was a ruse to surprise him. This sounded absurd, but David believed it. Overjoyed, he started planning his proposal. Fan Yu, also at the bar, overheard this juicy gossip. Furious, he plotted to sabotage David. The new employees were celebrating their new jobs. As they enjoyed themselves, Fan Yu arrived, killing the mood. Everyone awkwardly continued celebrating. Suddenly, someone in a white bear costume walked in, knelt down, and proposed to Yu Ran. The crowd cheered, but Yu Ran was stunned. She ultimately rejected David's proposal. Humiliated and heartbroken, he left. Fan Yu was ecstatic. After everyone left, Fan Yu offered Yu Ran a ride home. Disaster struck. The car locked, trapping them inside again. With no phone signal, they waited for help. After a while, security found them and let them out. Back in her room, Yu Ran discovered her roommate was moving out, another victim of heartbreak. She had fallen for a guest with short-term memory loss who was leaving the country for treatment. Unable to let him go alone, she decided to go with him. There were a lot of changes happening at ZAD. Chairman Z decided to hand over control of the hotel to Fan Yu, officially making him the general manager. His first decision was to fire David. He considered David a valuable asset, but also a dangerous threat that needed to be eliminated. Chairman Z agreed, but wasn't sure how to fire him. Before they could figure it out, David called, requesting a meeting with Fan Yu and handing in his resignation. He'd dedicated 10 years to the hotel, but now that he was no longer useful, they were discarding him. Resentment simmered within him. He took all the front desk and food and beverage staff with him, as a final act of defiance. Fan Yu was furious that David successfully persuaded the staff to resign, calling them all ungrateful. Yu Ran saw things differently. She blamed Fan Yu's management style, and partly blamed herself, thinking David was retaliating for her rejection. Fan Yu scoffed at her self-importance. Regardless, he had to beg David to stay. David agreed on one condition. Fan Yu had to give him something. Fan Yu assumed it was the general manager position, but it was Yu Ran. David wanted her transferred to the front desk, under his supervision. Though heartbroken, Fan Yu agreed for the sake of the hotel. He threw a small party to congratulate Yu Ran on her transfer, but she suspected. He wanted her to spy on David. As the new general manager, Fan Yu implemented new rules. Departments were now evaluated based on performance and guest satisfaction, with rewards for top performers and penalties for the lowest ranked. The next day, Yu Ran started at the front desk. Her first day was anything but easy. She walked dogs, babysat, and even tutored a guest. It was exhausting, but she earned many positive reviews for the front desk. The hotel was about to host a group of inventors for an awards ceremony. Fan Yu initially opposed this, considering them too lowbrow for ZAD, but they needed the business. The upcoming ceremony made Yu Ran uneasy. She noticed David's golden key was broken, and other strange occurrences. She feared something bad would happen. Her fears were justified. The inventors were eccentric, and their inventions even more so. One inventor, Chen Alai, presented a phone app designed to cure phone addiction, but it was poorly received. Upset, he attacked the attendees, injuring Yu Ran in the process. Security intervened and apprehended him. Yu Ran, who had fallen hard, was taken to the hospital with a bloody nose, but her injuries were minor. David and Fan Yu were extremely worried about her. While it seemed like the crisis was over, it was just the beginning. After being arrested, Chen Alai was restrained in a police car, waiting for the police to arrive. However, he somehow managed to escape. He returned to the awards ceremony hall and demanded that the judges restart the competition, claiming the results were unfair. No one supported him. They thought he was just crazy, probably from drug use, and delusional about his talent. The organizer's dismissive attitude infuriated him, and he grabbed one of the judges by the neck, holding him hostage. Chen Alai's extreme actions caused panic throughout the hall. He frantically held guests and staff hostage. At this point, Fan Yu and David were both trying to handle the situation at the hotel. They needed to quickly restore the power and internet, but the power lines were severely damaged, making quick restoration impossible. David was now more worried than anyone. He had made a wrong move by giving the electrical system diagrams of ZAD to a rival hotel. He hadn't expected them to play dirty. The judge he was holding hostage had high blood pressure and was in poor health. He fainted. Seeing his hostage unconscious, Chen Alai took Yu Ran back to the office to bandage her wounds. Yu Ran was in so much pain that she couldn't sit up. Their relationship was becoming increasingly ambiguous. It was no longer simply a relationship between an employee and the general manager. They both realized they had feelings for each other, but neither had the courage to confess. Fan Yu, being a shrewd businessman, easily realized that this incident wasn't random. Clearly, someone had planned this in advance. He decided to meet the person who caused this whole mess. The man was currently in jail, and he had a poor daughter who was sick in the hospital. Fan Yu promised to help the little girl and even cover the costs of art school for her. In return, her father had to tell him everything he knew. The truth was that someone had hired and manipulated this man, but he didn't know exactly who because they only communicated by phone. David was sure he had made a mistake by giving the electrical system diagrams to his counterpart at the rival hotel. He went to see her and criticized her deceitful actions, but she wasn't stupid enough to admit it. Yu Ran and Fan Yu were becoming closer. After work, they ate together and went on dates, just like a couple. The only thing missing was an official label on their relationship. Yu Ran's new task at the front desk was to take care of Chen Eli's daughter. Since her father was in jail, the hotel staff would be responsible for looking after her. Chen Eli's daughter was a 15-year-old girl who was very talented at drawing, but also incredibly addicted to her phone. She used it so much that her eyesight was getting worse, and if she continued, she might not be able to see. Yu Ran had a very hard time managing her. She followed the girl around 24/7, not giving her any time to use her phone. However, if she let her guard down for even a few minutes, the girl would immediately grab her phone. Yu Ran was losing sleep trying to help the girl overcome her addiction, but nothing worked. While escorting the chairman to the hospital, she left the girl unattended, and the girl seized the opportunity to use her phone. Exhausted from a long night, Yu Ran was taken by a concerned Fan Yu to his office to rest. Another employee witnessed this, and excited to have discovered a juicy secret about the general manager, immediately went to gossip. However, Fan Yu caught him. He threatened the employee with dismissal if he breathed a word. Coincidentally, this employee was Yu Ran's college friend. He revealed a secret. Yu Ran hiccuped uncontrollably around her crush. Fan Yu now had a way to assess her feelings. Chen Eli's daughter was a real troublemaker. Not only was she clever, but she was also aggressive. Since Yu Ran was exhausted, another employee was assigned to watch her, but he was careless. He not only revealed the gossip about Yu Ran and Fan Yu, but also allowed the girl access to her phone. Yu Ran returned to find the girl on her phone and immediately snatched it away. The girl fought back, and the phone ended up in the water. She burst into tears, explaining she needed the phone to book a graveside cleaning service for her mother's death anniversary. Yu Ran felt terrible, regretting her impulsiveness. She chased after the distraught girl, promising to visit her mother's grave with her. Despite being on duty, Yu Ran made arrangements to accompany the girl. Having lost her own mother, she understood the girl's longing for maternal affection. She prepared everything for a bike ride to the gravesite. Before they left, the girl complained of eye pain, urging Yu Ran to go alone. She had faked her pain so Yu Ran would leave, giving her free access to her phone. Trusting the girl, Yu Ran set off, unaware she'd been tricked by a 15-year-old. Her bike's brakes failed, and she crashed. Injured, she called Fan Yu for help. Hearing of her accident, he rushed to find her. He found her by the roadside, her leg injured and unable to walk properly. Distressed, he scolded her, and she burst into tears, explaining how the girl had lied about her mother's death anniversary and tricked her. Yu Ran felt both angry and heartbroken for the girl's deceased mother. She went to confront the girl, and they scolded her, explaining the gravity of her actions. After a serious talk, the girl finally understood. The next morning, Fan Yu, Yu Ran, and the girl went up the mountain to paint. Fan Yu seemed to have picked the worst possible day. First, their car ran out of gas. Then, while they were painting, it poured rain. On their way back, the car ran out of gas a second time. The three of them had to walk to a nearby area to get help. While crossing a field, Yu Ran was bitten by a snake on her leg. A worried Fan Yu immediately sucked the venom out. They were taken to the hospital right away. While Yu Ran was diagnosed as being okay, Fan Yu discovered his mouth was full of blood. Experiencing this for the first time in his life, and perhaps because he'd watched too many movies, he thought he was vomiting blood and about to die. In his final moments, he confessed his love to Yu Ran, and she accepted. A few minutes later, the doctor and nurse came to inform them of the results. It turned out he was just bleeding from his gums. He was incredibly embarrassed, but hey, at least he had a girlfriend. He was overjoyed to have finally won Yu Ran over. Thanks to the hotel's help, young Guodong successfully overcame her phone addiction. She said goodbye to everyone and returned to school after her break. Having the general manager as her boyfriend gave Yu Ran more confidence when presenting her ideas to the hotel. Unexpectedly, these ideas were met with positive feedback. Zad decided to organize a hot springs festival, just as she had suggested. Her first step towards earning the Golden Key title was a complete success. Fan Yu and Yu Ran happily went on a date after work. They were enjoying a romantic, lovey-dovey atmosphere when a text from David interrupted them. He really knew how to pick his moments. David wanted to meet with the general manager. When Fan Yu arrived at the bar, the assistant manager was already there. He gave the general manager his resignation letter. This time, David was really leaving. David was very curious why Fan Yu didn't suspect him of being involved in the recent incidents. In reality, Fan Yu had his suspicions. However, he knew his subordinate was capable and dedicated. In that regard, Fan Yu trusted that David wouldn't betray the hotel. After more than 10 years of service to ZAD, David knew his potential there had reached its limit. He no longer had the ability to bring more value to the hotel. So, he was considering leaving to find a more suitable environment. But he promised to ensure a smooth handover of his work before leaving. Yu Ran and Fan Yu thought of each other the moment they woke up, completely smitten. Today, Yu Ran was completely preoccupied with planning the Hot Springs Festival. She woke up early to prepare, only to be shocked by the news that the event had been cancelled. The one who gave this order was Chairman Ji, Fan Yu's father. The chairman was worried the hot springs were running dry and wanted to conserve water. Fan Yu met with him, arguing that he was overthinking things. He assured his father that even if the hot springs dried up, he could still find a way for the hotel to thrive. Persuaded by his son, the chairman agreed to the festival. ZAD wasn't just famous for its hot springs, it had other unique features. One was room 4434, a small cramped room with a view of a brick wall, yet highly sought after. Its popularity stemmed from rumors that couples who stayed there quickly conceived, earning it the nickname Baby Room. The Hot Springs Festival brought in potential customers and solved several pressing issues. Yu Ran deserved most of the credit. Her suggestions had significantly improved the hotel. David, recognizing her talent, felt reassured about leaving. Yu Ran felt a little sad about David's departure, hoping he would find a suitable new job. On his last day, Chairman Ji saw him off, regretting the loss of a key employee. David offered a parting piece of advice: be wary of Miss Bai, the hotel's secretive investor. There was always something happening at the hotel. Lately, room 4434 had been particularly problematic. Guests complained of an intruder leaving the letter Z on their belongings. None of the staff, including housekeeping, claimed responsibility, fueling rumors of a ghost and terrifying the guests. Fan Yu promised a swift resolution. As if that wasn't enough, a guest staying in a villa also complained of a ghost. Fan Yu and his staff went to investigate. The ghost turned out to be the guest's husband, trying to surprise his wife with a romantic gesture. Instead, he terrified her, prompting her to call the hotel staff. No one expected such a comical turn of events. The husband confided in Fan Yu, sharing his struggles to please his wife. They believed having a child would strengthen their marriage, but they hadn't been successful. Despite having no medical issues, they couldn't conceive and wanted to try their luck in room 4434 to expedite the process. They were disappointed to find it was already booked. This couple seemed to have a knack for attracting trouble. Even on vacation, they couldn't find peace. They were secretly observing Mr. and Mrs. Du, the couple occupying room 4434, trying to figure out what they were talking about. The reason they were so interested was that they had been the ones to snatch the baby room away from them. If it weren't for Mr. and Mrs. Du, they would have been the ones staying in room 4434. The husband, using his excellent hearing, overheard the other couple's private conversation. It turned out that the Du couple were on the verge of divorce and were taking this trip as a last hurrah. They had already completed the paperwork and were just days away from signing the divorce papers. Mr. and Mrs. He were overjoyed, believing they would soon get their chance to stay in room 4434. While it seemed like Mr. and Mrs. He were the most nosy people around, Yu Ran and Fan Yu were actually the biggest gossip mongers. They observed everyone's movements and concluded that Mr. and Mrs. He were likely connected to the strange incidents in room 4434. Fan Yu was lurking near Mr. and Mrs. He's villa when he accidentally bumped into Ling Long. She was Fan Yu's ex-girlfriend, and they had dated while he was studying abroad. Yu Ran also happened to witness this encounter, and she was curious about the identity of this woman. When she found out that this beautiful woman was her boyfriend's ex, she became a bit wary. As it turned out, Fan Yu and Yu Ran's deductions were correct. Mr. He was the one causing all the strange ghostly occurrences in room 4434, believing that staying in the baby room would increase their chances of having a child. He had used all sorts of tricks to scare Mr. and Mrs. Du. The couple was terrified. Mrs. Du, who was already easily scared, was particularly shaken by these incidents. When she found lipstick and a woman's hair in the room, she assumed her husband had brought another woman back to their room and became furious. Their relationship, which was already strained, became even worse. Fan Yu and Yue Ran came up with a plan to investigate the situation, but it failed miserably. The plan that Yu Ran suggested wasn't practical at all, so Fan Yu had to step in. As expected of the general manager, his mind worked differently. He figured that whoever was doing this would have to go to the supply room to plant the items. Their plan was to wait in the supply room and catch the culprit red-handed. Just as Detective Fan Yu had predicted, Mr. and Mrs. He, disguised as master thieves, snuck into the supply room to carry out their scheme. They were gleefully setting things up, completely unaware that they were about to be caught. Mr. Du and his wife also came to the supply room to investigate. He wanted to prove to his wife that he hadn't brought another woman back to their room. It was all a misunderstanding. When they walked into the room, they found Mr. and Mrs. He with Yu Ran and Fan Yu. The mystery was solved. Mr. He was the one behind all the weird stuff happening in room 4434. The Hes were freaking out, worried they'd go to jail. But after everything, Mrs. He realized she was still very much in love with her husband, and they wanted to have a baby and live happily ever after. Instead of pressing charges, the Dust saw that the Hes still cared about each other and gave them the key to room 4434. The Hes were super happy with their crazy Zad experience, and Yue Ran and Fan Yu had saved the day again. The Hot Springs Festival planning was going well, but Chairman Z decided to switch things up. He put Ling Long, a big investor, in charge of the whole thing. Fan Yu was furious and totally against it. It was Yu Ran's idea, and it wasn't fair for someone else to take over. Even though Fan Yu was mad at his dad's decision, he couldn't really do anything about it. He felt bad and worried about Yu Ran, figuring she'd be upset. When he saw a woman in his office, Fan Yu thought it was his girlfriend and hugged her. He quickly realized it wasn't Yu Ran, but his ex, Ling Long. Yu Ran walked in right then, saw the whole thing, and heard Ling Long's snarky comments, which made her furious. Jealous, Yue Ran stormed off, and Fan Yu ran after her. No matter what he said, she wouldn't calm down. She thought he was still into his ex. Back in her room, her friends were gushing about how gorgeous Ling Long was. Yu Ran felt insecure, thinking she wasn't as pretty as Fan Yu's ex, which made her feel really down. An ex is always a pain. Ling Long wasn't just clinging to Fan Yu, she wanted to get back together. After being hurt by Ling Long, Fan Yu turned her down flat. He didn't want his ex messing things up with his new girlfriend. Ling Long offered to work at the front desk to help out. Yu Ran immediately agreed, thinking, game on. Let's see who's better. The front desk was the face of the hotel, the place where all guest complaints and issues were handled. This time, an elderly woman had lost her ring and was desperate to find it. Ling Long and Yu Ran searched high and low, not missing a single spot. However, despite all their efforts, Yue Ran couldn't find the ring. Just as they were comforting the distraught guest, Ling Long appeared, having found the ring, and quickly took all the credit with the guest. Because she had studied abroad, Ling Long's knowledge and skills were very impressive. She appointed Yu Ran as her assistant. Regarding the Hot Springs Festival arrangements, Ling Long booked every single villa in the hotel for the staff as an employee benefit. However, this affected the hotel's business. Regular customers couldn't book rooms, which damaged the hotel's reputation. This forced Fan Yu to personally confront her. He suspected Ling Long had some kind of hidden agenda for returning. However, she denied it, and even created further misunderstandings. She deliberately hugged Fan Yu tightly in front of Yu Ran, using every opportunity to drive a wedge between the young couple. Needless to say, Yue Ran was furious and didn't even want to look at her boyfriend. Hotel employees like Yu Ran were always helping guests with all sorts of problems. This time, the elderly woman who had lost her ring was reported missing. Yu Ran and Fan Yu had to search for her. They discovered that the elderly lady had Alzheimer's disease, a condition that causes memory loss, making her forgetful. Yu Ran told Fan Yu about the woman's condition, expressing her sympathy for the elderly guest, and she also wanted to have a serious conversation with him. Knowing that his girlfriend was unhappy about his ex, Fan Yu decided to explain the situation to her. Fan Yu frankly admitted that, compared to Ling Long, his current girlfriend fell short in every way. He even went so far as to call her clumsy, stubborn, and foolish, which made her angry. However, in the end, Fan Yu said that she was very special, the woman who broke all his preconceived notions. This was music to Yu Ran's ears, and she smiled brightly. They happily teased and flirted with each other, lost in their happiness, completely unaware that Ling Long was fuming as she watched them. After resolving their misunderstanding, their secret relationship became happy and playful again. But good things never last. That night, Ling Long showed up at Fan Yu's office, pretending it was about work, but really she was trying to get back together. Fan Yu shut her down, saying he didn't want her messing with his life anymore. But she was like a stubborn fly, refusing to leave and setting up camp in his office. Rather than deal with it, Fan Yu just left until she got bored and went away. The next morning, Ling Long finally left, but not before trying to cause trouble between Fan Yu and Yue Ran. She left an earring on his desk and a lipstick stain on his bed, then acted like nothing happened. She later faked losing an earring and asked Yu Ran to take some files to Fan Yu's office, hoping Yu Ran would find the earring and get suspicious. But thankfully, Yue Ran didn't notice a thing. Yu Ran went to see Fan Yu with a great idea, a treasure hunt for the festival. Fan Yu loved it and decided to help by hiding the prizes. While they were talking, Yue Ran suggested a fun way to see if they were meant to be. They'd each hide something important to them, and whoever found the other person's item would prove they were a match made in heaven. Fan Yu agreed, having already prepared a surprise for her, an engagement ring. He carefully hid it, but Ling Long saw him do it. Love can make people act irrationally. It can make your emotions go haywire. Just a moment before, Yue Ran had been playfully teasing Fan Yu, seemingly unconcerned about him seeing his ex. However, she soon fell into deep thought. To clear her head, she went to the Love Guru's bar for advice. The 30-something, perpetually single guru used astrology to predict Yu Ran's compatibility with Fan Yu. The results were shocking. Fan Yu and Ling Long were a perfect match, while Yu Ran and Fan Yu were completely incompatible. This news hit Yu Ran hard. She checked again, but the results remained the same. She tried using the Chinese zodiac, but got the same result. Dejected, she sat by the road and overheard some employees gossiping about Fan Yu and his ex. Everywhere she went, people were shipping Fan Yu and Ling Long. A heavy downpour added to her sadness. She decided to break up with Fan Yu. Fan Yu was baffled by her sudden anger. It turned out she was upset because she couldn't find a gift she'd given him, claiming it proved they weren't meant to be and that they should end things quickly. Fan Yu refused to accept this. He searched for the gift all night. The next morning, he found it in his desk drawer and rushed to apologize. Yu Ran was still upset, but eventually calmed down. Fan Yu took her to where he'd hidden the treasure. When he opened the box to put the ring on her finger, it was empty. Someone had stolen the ring. He raced to the security office to check the cameras. Ling Long appeared, taunting Yue Ran, and revealing that she knew about Fan Yu's father's illness, which he'd been keeping secret from his son. After recovering, Fan Yu went to confront Ling Long, demanding the return of his family heirlooms. She initially wanted to rekindle their relationship, claiming their past love was genuine, and that they could start over. But after all the hurt she caused, Fan Yu firmly refused. He quickly retrieved the ring and went to comfort Yu Ran. Seeing her insecurity, Fan Yu wanted to go public with their relationship, but she wasn't ready. He respected her wishes and took her out for dinner, promising to discuss it later. But when Yue Ran opened her boyfriend's closet, she found Ling Long's earrings. There was no escaping her girlfriend's anger this time. This time, even the ancestors couldn't save Fan Yu. A worried Yu Ran turned to Ning Jia for advice, wondering if she was being cheated on. Ning Jia, having been betrayed in the past, had a vivid imagination and interpreted the earring as a classic sign of a cheating boyfriend, a primitive, primal display of a player. This made Yu Ran lose faith in their relationship and decide to quit her job. Fan Yu, fearing he was losing his girlfriend, tried everything to prove his innocence. He showed her the security footage from that night with Ling Long, resolving the misunderstanding and easing tensions between them. But Ling Long was furious. She didn't understand why Fan Yu, such a proud man, would humiliate himself to appease his girlfriend. Jealous of Yue Ran's happiness, she sought her out and taunted her. implying Fan Yu couldn't possibly love a simple employee like her, and demanding to know her methods for seducing the general manager. Yu Ran, usually agreeable, refused to back down, determined to clear things up and not back down or give in to anyone. Knowing she couldn't intimidate Yu Ran, Ling Long decided to use more forceful methods. From the start, Ling Long's investment in the company had been strategic. She wanted full control of Zad, and to pressure the Ji family into forcing Fan Yu to stay with her. However, fate intervened. Fan Yu fell for one of his employees, ruining her plans. To separate Yue Ran from Fan Yu, Ling Long threatened her, promising to ruin the life of the person Yu Ran loved most if she refused to comply. Confronted with this ultimatum, Yue Ran agreed to leave Fan Yu and compromise with Ling Long. That day, she quietly packed her things and left the hotel. When her coworkers and boyfriend discovered her disappearance, they frantically searched for her, only to find she was completely gone without a trace. With newfound power, Ling Long became increasingly tyrannical. Ning Jia and some coworkers suspected a guest of trying to skip out on his bill and followed him. The guest, however, countersued the hotel for invasion of privacy and stalking. Ling Long used this as an opportunity to fire all the employees involved. Fan Yu stepped in, immediately rejecting this absurd suggestion. During the argument, Fan Yu received Yu Ran's address. He immediately went to see her. Expecting to never see him again, Yue Ran was, in fact, working at a temple next to the hotel. Yu Ran did everything she could to avoid Fan Yu, figuring it was the only way to protect David. Ling Long wasn't giving up either. She kept pressuring Fan Yu to get back together, threatening the hotel if he didn't. Fan Yu refused to back down and talk to his dad. Chairman Ji was stressed. His health was bad, business wasn't great, and he was worried sick about his son. As a dad, he couldn't let his son's life be ruined to save the hotel. After a lot of thinking, he decided to fight back against Ling Long. Fan Yu was determined to get his girlfriend back and went to the temple again to talk to her. He even faced his fear of slopes to show how serious he was, which really touched Yu Ran. She decided to go back and deal with everything with him. Back at the hotel, the mystery of the missing guest was still unsolved. His sudden disappearance freaked everyone out. Ling Long wanted to get to the bottom of it, but Fan Yu explained that the guest sleepwalked and often wandered off, leading people to think he was running away. The guest was unhappy with the service, so Yue Ran stepped in and got him a free upgrade to make up for it. The problem was that Ling Long had given all the best rooms to the staff. Someone had to give one back. That someone was Ning Jia's awful boyfriend, who'd tricked her and taken her villa, putting his new girlfriend there instead. That was seriously messed up, so her friends decided to get the villa back. They managed to convince Lu Hao to give the villa back. They took care of Ling Long too. She tried to cause problems, but she couldn't hurt the hotel. She ended her deal with Zad just as they found a new investor. Fan Yu went public with all of Ling Long's dirty dealings. Now he just needed to win back his girlfriend. Thanks to his secretary, Mia, Fan Yu and Yue Ran made up. The Hot Springs Festival was a huge success. The hotel made a killing from the festival, but they needed to prepare for something even bigger, the National Hotel Awards. Zad had been out of the top contender for the past 2 years, and losing this year would be a huge blow to their reputation. Every year, the judging committee sends an inspector to observe the hotel's operations. The staff had to be on their best behavior and provide top-notch service. Since they didn't know who the inspector was, everyone had to watch what they said and did. Chairman Zi took Fan Yu and Yu Ran to the place where he planned to spend his retirement. His health was declining, and it was time to find a peaceful place to spend his remaining years. In this sacred place, he hoped his son would propose to his girlfriend. Back at the hotel, staff reported that the hot springs had suddenly dried up. Many guests developed rashes and skin irritations after using the water. Angry guests demanded refunds and criticized the hotel's terrible service. Chairman Ji fainted upon hearing the news about the hot springs. He had never seen anything like this before. His health worsened. Taking advantage of the situation, some investors tried to pressure Chairman Zi into selling the hotel for a low price. Zad was his life's work, and he refused to sell it cheaply. The hotel's situation grew desperate. Fan Yu tried everything to raise money to pay off the debts and contracts. Guests left. There was no one left to serve. They had too much inventory, so Fan Yu decided to have a staff party. Hearing about the hotel's impending bankruptcy, many employees left. Fan Yu was in a more difficult situation than ever before. He went from CEO to having nothing. His mother returned from overseas to take care of his sick father. Yuran stood by him, determined to weather the storm together. But Fan Yu didn't want her to sacrifice her life for him. As the hotel closing date approached, almost all the guests left. Only one guest remained, Mr. Lee, the suspected skipper. While checking out, Mr. Lee noticed all the other guests had left and that the hotel would close immediately after he checked out. So, he decided to stay a few more days to enjoy the perks. During those days, Mr. Lee was the hotel's only guest and was treated like royalty. He had an escort wherever he went, and Fan Yu even personally gave him a massage. Before leaving, Mr. Lee received gifts from the hotel and didn't have to pay anything. This left a very positive impression on him. Even though the famous ZAD was closed, Yuan didn't want to leave. She begged Fan Yu to let her experience the hotel as a guest one last time. Having worked there for so long, she wanted to experience the hotel as a guest. They happily enjoyed the hotel as guests one last time before leaving, both feeling a deep sense of sadness. The rain started pouring, as if trying to keep them there. Amidst the downpour, ZAD's former guests reappeared. They returned because of the excellent service and fond memories. Knowing the hotel was closed, Fan Yu still wanted to serve them, so he personally cooked for everyone. While the general manager was busy in the kitchen, other employees started returning, and their flights were canceled due to the heavy rain. Mr. Lee, the last guest, unexpectedly brought more people with him, wanting to stay and wait out the storm. With guests arriving, ZAD sprang back to life. The rain continued, making Yuran sad. Fan Yu came to her, offering her the ring as a keepsake, but she refused to give up. She asked him to hide the ring. If she found it after the rain stopped, it would mean they were meant to be, and a miracle would happen. Fan Yu agreed and hid the ring carefully. Yuran searched the hotel in the rain. As the rain stopped, a miracle happened. The hot spring sprang back to life. Yuran found the ring in the pool and happily hugged Fan Yu. He proposed, and she said yes. More good news followed. An investor offered 200 million in funding, and Mr. Lee, the mysterious inspector, awarded ZAD the Golden Hotel Award. ZAD was reborn. Everyone returned to their work. The story ends with everyone happy, Yuran and Fan Yu together, and Yuran achieving her dream of becoming a Golden Key employee. This is where the story ends. Don't forget to like and subscribe to not miss out on more amazing videos. For now, goodbye, and until next time.